speakers want to join me here, Bram, Jorge, Laura, Eleonora, and Nicola, so we can start. Thank you. Siamo 6, quindi i posti ci sono per tutti. Ce la facciamo. Vieni vicino a me. Sabrina, vai a chiamare un attimo Alessia, perché deve far partire il video. Alessia. Cosa c'è? No, beh, giusto per non alzarci, così, insomma. Continua, Nicola, manca. Ah, Jorge. Sì, ma è ovvio che sia sempre così. Ma c'è un po' di gente fuori, comunque, bisogna dire che c'è un po' di... So, I think we are ready to start this roundtable. The objective of this session is to connect the main elements emerging from tourism-friendly cities, as we saw before, the main points of the manifesto and the actions carried out by the cities to the European debates on sustainable tourism. We are going to do it with representatives of cities, with representatives of European organizations, academics. I want to introduce you the speakers of this session, starting from my left, Laura Colini, program expert of the URBACT Secretariat, Eleonora Orso of Eurocities, Nicola Bellini of the Sant'Anna School of Advanced Studies of Pisa, and then on my right, Bram van Braeckevelt, that I pronounced it perfectly, 4 years in Brussels are needed for that, Deputy Mayor for Tourism of the City of Ghent, and Jorge Villar-Gujarro, Deputy Mayor for Tourism of the City of Cáceres. But before starting with our speakers, we have a message from Alessandra Priante, Director of the Regional Department for Europe of the UNWTO, the UN World Organization for Tourism, that I can ask Alessia to launch.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a real pleasure to be with you today in this roundtable on how European cities are making sustainable tourism an engine for social, economic, and environmental growth. I am unfortunately not able to be with you in the beautiful city of Venice, one of the most known tourism destinations in Italy, I would say, in the world, but also very close to my heart for many reasons. But I'm now currently in Yerevan, Armenia, where we're celebrating the 67th Commission for Europe of the UNWTO. You all know the UNWTO. We're the United Nations agency for the promotion of responsible, universally accessible, and mostly sustainable tourism. And I'm thrilled to be addressing you today in this platform, where we're setting the Tourism-Friendly Cities Action Planning Network, bringing local communities and tourists together for urban sustainability. I firmly believe in the power of cities for transformative change through tourism, in line with the UN's Agenda 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. This year, especially on the European level, we're witnessing a flourishing ecosystem of innovation-driving policy initiatives when it comes to decarbonization and greening of Europe's capital cities and major metropolitan hubs. To mention just two initiatives, the European Commission, as you well know by now, launched through its Horizon Europe program the mission whereby 100 cities must reach carbon neutrality by 2030. And the European Capitals of Smart Tourism Initiatives, also of the European Commission, recognizes outstanding achievements by European cities as tourism destinations in 4 categories: accessibility, digitalization, cultural heritage and creativity, and obviously sustainability as the main one. The winners actually were Valencia and Bordeaux, and we'll be celebrating an event with Valencia at the end of this year. This EU initiatives aim to promote tourism in the EU, network and strengthen destination, and facilitate the exchange of best practices. The time is now to deliver, and cities like Venice must be at the forefront of leading the change. The threat is real. Tourism is responsible for 8% of global CO2 emissions annually, and by 2030, it is estimated an increase of 25% in CO2 emissions compared to 2016. Restarting tourism now, as member states reopen and ease restrictions allowing for a gradual recovery of tourism, we have many opportunities to prepare local authorities, the business communities, the residents, and the stakeholders to reduce the impact of tourism on the environment with innovative measures and long-term strategies. This is why the UNWTO has been proactively engaged during the pandemic, proposing forward-looking, impactful initiatives with a close eye on tourism sector's impact on the environment and society. Travel is an indispensable part of human life, but without environmental sustainability, the future of travel is at risk, as was demonstrated by the negative repercussions of the pandemic, which we are still witnessing in these years as well. In response for this call for sustainability, I would like to bring to your attention two important initiatives that we have launched. First, the Glasgow Declaration on Climate Action and Tourism, which is an urgent global call for commitment to a decade of climate action and tourism. And the aim is to cut global tourism emissions by at least a half over the next decade and reach net zero emissions as soon as possible before 2050. Each signatory will commit to deliver a concrete climate action plan or updated plan within 12 months of signing. And currently we have over 540 signatories across all sectors. Second, in January 2020, UNWTO launched the Global Tourism Plastics Initiatives as part of the activities of the One Planet Sustainable Tourism Program, which is an initiative led by UN Environment and UNWTO in collaboration with the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. With these examples, I want to remark that UNWTO is fully committed to accelerating a sustainable tourism transition as we gradually return to reopening the borders, especially in Europe, for travel. So we count on the cities, we count on the outcomes of this meeting to progress further. And I wish you a very productive discussion and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. Buona giornata. Grazie.
Ciao. So as Alessandra Priante highlighted, the debate on sustainable tourism is touching many different aspects of the current debate on sustainable urban development, the reduction of CO2 emissions, the civic engagement of people, the role of local communities, the role of ICT platforms. All these elements are strictly connected also to the evolution of the European policies. We are in a moment where the new cohesion policy 2021-2027 is going to start, the new programs are going to be launched. So what we are going to do today with the guests of this roundtable is to explore also concretely how all the contents, all the elements highlighted before by tourism-friendly cities can be fundamental for the debate on sustainable impact of tourism in Europe. I will start with Laura Colini, program expert of the URBACT program. Laura, you coordinated the URBACT action in the framework of the Urban Agenda Partnership on Cultural Heritage. What I ask you is to tell us more about this action and how tourism-friendly cities outputs can fuel the debate in the next few years.
Thank you very much. I had prepared a PowerPoint because I thought there was I had to explain what we did, but I don't know. Do you prefer to have the PowerPoint or just the talking? Okay. How much time do I have? Like 10 minutes or something? 10 minutes. Okay. We are sort of among us here, and so you all know about URBACT, so I don't have to explain very much what we do. But as a program, we have several activities that are beyond what networks do. Most of these activities are about capitalizing, really taking the best or the hottest topics that you cover during your activities of the networks and link them to wider debates at European level. So one of the topic that was very important for us last year was the investment around housing, using housing as a way to rethink the accessibility of the whole city and the right to housing. We worked on 3 main areas around collaborative housing, no one left behind, and fair finance. Why do I say that? Because tourism has a lot to do, as you know better than me, with connection with locals and inhabitants and new inhabitants or city users, in the way you want to call it, or visitors. And so one of the debates around housing was coming from cities was this. Coming before COVID, I think it was sort of an elephant in the room in our previous discussion of the other day. Nobody talked about short-term rentals, the negative effects of Airbnbs or Booking.coms or other platforms that are online and really, making possible profits for business, but also creating many side effects also for inhabitants. And these are like some of the protests that were going on before COVID, before in Barcelona, in Amsterdam, many in Paris. The Eurocities also engaged supporting the initiative of 20 cities claiming for better regulation at European level. You know that there is a lot of problematics and bottlenecks in relation to regulating Airbnb in a way that is more, it respects the business, but also respects the right of people to have, a decent life and a good quality of life and good affordable rent to pay and not to be pushed out of the city, like what is happening in Venice very, very much. And social movements and other organizations have been shouting and screaming that this is the presence of this short-term rental is sort of Disneyfying many cities, especially historical cities in Europe. And so as URBACT, we have been using this action of pushing the better regulation at European level within another frame, which is a bit broader than the URBACT itself, and it's called the European Urban Agenda. We talked about this a little bit in one of the Zoom meeting, if some people were present. The urban agenda, just a very quick reference for who does not know what I'm talking about. I had opened a page, if it works here. No, it does not work. So anyway, so it's a frame created by the European Commission, especially DG REGIO, that brings together cities, member states, different DGs, Directorate General of the Commission, international organization. For the first time, that never existed before 2016, this kind of coalition, a voluntary-based coalition that provides information on better regulation, better funding at European level. So to say, cities may have a voice directly. That's the idea. This partnership on cultural heritage has a lot to do with tourism. And there are actions directly targeting tourism. One is about, for instance, managing better flows, directed by the city of Florence. Then there is another action that we directed as URBACT on better regulation of short-term rentals. For Italians, the coordinators are the ministry, the MIBAC. The ministry is coordinating this partnership, and I told about this partnership yesterday, saying that there would be a final event of this partnership the 20th and 21st of June. So one action is a regulating phenomenon of sharing economy, so that what I was explaining before. I just jumped some of this data that we use. When we started to do this action on regulating better the Airbnb and short-term rental economies, we were in another period. We started to think about this before COVID. We worked during COVID, and now we're finishing with COVID. And there has been a long run between that, because we had high peaks of investment on Airbnb, high peaks of protests of cities around this, And then we had a stop, dropping of investment of Airbnb, and people were like saying, oh, what's going to happen afterwards? Are we going to revolutionize the world? And maybe Airbnb is going to become more ethical. And that's what happened a little bit. You see that Airbnb has become more ethical, supporting, supporting also refugees in Ukraine, and making sort of a reshaping the structure of the faces of Airbnb. But also we saw that the business as usual is coming up again, and it showed the strong resilience of the sector. Some of you may think this is good because we have more people coming up here to our place and stay, and they can afford the place to stay, which is in principle not a bad idea. The problem is that all the taxes that go through Airbnb, they go to San Francisco, and very little is retained at city level. And it's you have a monothematization, a monocultural offer that is managed only by this society. And many problems come in legal terms. And so we worked together with lawyers that could that had support, the lawyers that supported directly the initiative of 20 cities that claim better regulation at European level. And they look at the bottlenecks in terms of regulation. All this material will be published online on URBACT, so you will have the opportunities to read and not only to look at my slides, and where the main areas of concern are highlighted in terms of legality. This might be slightly changed with the new, I don't want to become too technical, but the regulation, the Airbnb, the problematic is there's an intermediary body in a certain way, because it's a platform managing hosting places. And so the European Commission said we'll not be able to regulate that because they are intermediary, and we don't really be able to also have all the data, all the information. And so one of the main concern is also to look at the legality. What is illegal? What the lawyer said, what is illegal online should be illegal. So what is illegal offline should be also illegal online. So that there is also another bottleneck is the collaboration with the platform and cities to get data, or platforms with other authorities, for instance, at national level. I just go through all of this very quickly, just to say that the new Digital Services Act that establishes accountability standards for all online platforms, not only Airbnb, but many others that are selling goods online, has been published at the end of April this year. And this creates a new framework of agreement among member states to harmonize regulations of online platform. So to say that the debate is very much open, because politically speaking is a very torn type of question on how really to get the data, how to use this data, how to limit, how to manage taxation, and so on. And so we had over the years different types of responses that have been given at city level. Like, for instance, Amsterdam limited the number of stays. Paris also did something similar. Bordeaux used some kind of national and local laws for controlling the change of uses from residential to hostel. So limiting, for instance, they told us in the interviews that if you rent an entire apartment, you need to make sure that another apartment is made available for normal rental, for residential rental. So to say, you cannot make a profit out of selling, or how to create a hosting spaces, and so to also detracting the space for residential purposes. So you see that there is a number of tricks and solutions that have been, solutions that have been created at city level in a situation of a lack of regulation at national level and also at European level. But our question, because we are urbanists and we work with cities, It's like what cities can do. That was the most difficult part, because when we are not lawyers, we don't understand very much what's going on at regulation at European level, but we see the effects at city level. And so then we were thinking, okay, let's ask cities like you, the tourist-friendly cities, but also others, how do they see their relation with short-term rental? And we saw from your collaboration that some are striving to increase the number of visitors. They would like to use Airbnb to have more visitors. And others, they say, well, we already know that they create lots of problems and we need to limit the hyper-touristicization. And we worked with many of the networks, not only you, the Kairos access to a certain extent, also to question about this situation. I just go through quickly to the study to say that we worked a lot about on three main areas, about prevention, community engagement, and local powers, to say that we need to approach the question of management of short-term rental not only when hyper-touristicization has taken over, like not in the case as Venice or Florence or Barcelona. We need to work closely with the cities that would like to have more people to come and say, okay, how do we manage the forces and the need of using the short-term platform, maybe more ethical, maybe not only Airbnb, let's think of other alternatives, and work directly with them, rethinking the ecosystem of short-term rental. And so prevention. And then we think that regulation won't be enough, because a regulation that only controls, but is not taken by the citizens as an opportunity, it won't be enough. So you have the law, but you have the way to escape the law if you don't see the law that is useful. And then the local powers matter. So the idea was to create a new ecosystem of alternatives. So I jump all the responses that we get from Don Leary, Braga. You can read them. I think they're very interesting if you read them into one go. In all the sections that we had in the study. The conclusion is that we were thinking more towards the creation of alternatives in the sense of we think of platform cooperativism. We think that could be, we tested also with some of the cities, could be an alternative to rethink the idea of online platform, but they are managed as well by cities. So there are examples of working like this, like cities or collaboration at district level of different cities that they can manage demands of newcomers. For instance, if I come to the district of the Grosseto or southern Tuscany, the local agencies can say that if I don't find an accommodation, maybe there is another bed and breakfast, or there is another family hosting or a guest house where I could go, and I don't have to find necessarily everything online by myself. There are alternatives of sort of in Brussels, and they have chambre d'hôte or guest houses. There are alternatives to Airbnbs. There is Fairbnb. I think that's not totally working well at the moment. It's very expensive and not everyone understands how it works. So I think that there is space for rebuilding a new ecosystem that creates also, if you want to be super business oriented, we need to have a competitiveness against Airbnb. We can't leave the market only to one single investor. And so if the alternatives is very much rooted in the power of the municipality, I think there is a better opportunity also to control the negative effects of hyper-touristicization and making sure that also residents have affordable places and livable places where to stay, and not really to fight alone against the power of few corporations. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. And I need to say that it's really great to see that so many elements highlighted by the cities of this network, like community engagement and the importance of the local power for rebuilding the sector, are now part of the debate. And I really think that business as usual is coming up again, yes, but we need to make some changes. We need to also profit of the opportunity we have today of discussing some of the most interesting solutions, I guess, that are being developed in this year for improving the impact of tourism in cities. So thank you so much for connecting the work of our cities to the work of the European Urban Agenda on cultural heritage. Eurocities as well led a very important action of a huge number of cities on this topic. So I asked Eleonora also which role the topic of sustainable impact to tourism is playing in the more general debate on sustainable urban development, and what are the actions that the Eurocities is currently doing, and how the action of our cities can be connected to this.
So, good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here on behalf of Eurocities, but also personally, because as I already told a bit to some of you, I'm a Venetian by heart, because I've studied most of my degree in here. And when I was living here, I could really see with my eyes and touch with my hands what we talk about when we speak of sustainable tourism, and the challenges, but also the potential that cities as Venice have. And I think that during these past 2 days, we had very interesting discussions around this topic. And we realized that tourism, of course, is one of the main economic assets of cities, because it generates, stimulates local development, it brings a social added value, but also it comes with some downsides, like, as we have discussed, the relationship between locals and visitors, housing prices, of course, and the pressure on public services. And I think these are all challenges that have been exacerbated with the pandemic. And the pandemic, once again, served as a sort of catalyzer to make some changes. And these changes are being, let's say, led at a European level with some goals, I would say, that, call for more green, more digital, and more inclusive recovery in all of these sectors. And of course, tourism is one of the sectors that needs to be recovered, and needs to be recovered in cities. Within Eurocities, before the pandemic, we didn't have a specialized theme working on sustainable tourism. It was a bit all over the place. But we started a thematic group focusing on sustainable tourism, and among the actions that we've been working on, there was, of course, this, as Laura mentioned, cities coalition to regulate, coming together as an alliance to regulate a bit these short-term rentals for holidays. And the European Union opened a public consultation last year that was running from the 27th of September till the 13th of December, asking, cities or stakeholders to contribute. And we came together. There were 22 European cities coming together to just raise their concern about the short-term rentals. And I mean, I'm not going to delve into the details because Laura has already spoke about that. But of course, the main concern was the competitiveness of, more standard hospitality services like hotels with respect to the short-term rentals, Airbnb, and of course the problem of housing, because people that have a spare room would profit more by renting it through short-term rentals to tourists than to people that actually want to move to your city to bring talent to study there, to work there. And in this sense, of course, I think the city of Amsterdam is one of the cities that took one of the most strict decisions, and it was already in place before the pandemic. They basically wanted to ban somehow new souvenir shops that wanted to be, put in place where there were local businesses, or they are now stopping new hotels from being built, and they are trying to regulate quite strictly this short-term rental thing. So if you want to rent a room, okay, they would rather give priority, and the municipality steps in to give priority to people that want to rent the room for people living there actually, rather than just for short time and for holidays. And I think the city of Amsterdam, which is part of our membership, is an interesting example, because they are the first city that wants to implement the concept of donut economics, which is a theoretical model that has been developed by Kate Raworth, which is an economist, and it's a model of sustainability, you know, achieving sustainability both environmentally and for people within the limits of the planet. And this, of course, has to do also with tourism. And other cities that, you know, developed quite interesting actions from our membership are, for instance, the city of Barcelona, because during the pandemic, the city of Barcelona took the lead to conduct a study on city center revitalization, because they were like, okay, something is not working here. We realized we were too dependent on tourism, and so they came together with 6 other cities, which are the cities of course, Amsterdam, Ghent, Lujbljana, Nantes, and they were developing this study to show what are the criticalities, and they realized that cities were too much dependent on tourism as a sort of monosectoral approach. So they were like, okay, key is to diversify our economy. So for instance, the city of Barcelona, what did was, okay, we need to invest also in innovation. We need to invest, for instance, in other potential areas of the city, like the blue economy. They developed some projects within the port area. And as in every business, when you diversify a bit your portfolio, you are a bit more, you can stay more afloat. And another result of this interesting study conducted with a bunch of cities was the reflection upon, of course, sustainability. And sustainability both in terms of mobility, and this, of course, connects a bit to what I've heard during the discussion the past days of the city, for instance, of Dubrovnik, that is trying to pioneer this new electric boats for tourists. And they were like, okay, we have to think that mobility and transport is one of the main axes of our tourism infrastructure. So we need to make it sustainable. And then another, of course, area was that was highlighted in the study was a transition towards more sustainable tourism as a whole. So providing different experiences, and here I think also of what Genova is thinking about the project on the pedestrian bus, so proximity tourism, doing something in open spaces, making tourism something more sustainable also for the interest and the topic and what people do, and more related maybe to agrotourism, so local culture, local food, agrotourism, and then I think, of course, of the case of Cáceres as well. And so just to maybe conclude a bit what I would like to say, I think it's very important that when we think about sustainable tourism, we think about the big challenges ahead that are highlighted, of course, with the new European Green Deal, is like digital, green, and inclusive. And I think that examples of cities here today, but also from Eurocities, show that. And the use of data as well. We haven't talked a lot about digitalization, but I'm thinking about the city of Florence, for instance, that once again, to develop a more sustainable kind of tourism, they developed this app that's called Feel Florence, that tells you live how many people are visiting that specific monument, so that you, as a tourist, know if you want to go there, and if not, the app itself suggests alternative itineraries, either within the city center or in more rural areas, so that people can have also this option of choosing. And this connects, of course, to a use of data, a use of digital tools, and to achieve something that's sustainable. And I won't speak any further, but I think that another thing that we haven't really talked about is the role of skills. And also the tourism industry needs upskilling and reskilling, and there is a pact of skills that is within the transition pathway for tourism, that it's the European industrial strategy. Within the framework of the European Industrial Strategy 2020, there is this transition pathway for tourism, which once again is very much in line with all the EU policies that say, okay, the goals are green, digital, and inclusive. And so we have to, in the recovery, we have also to think about these dimensions. And when it comes to how do we recover, it comes the question of funding, which is always very interesting because we have all these ideals, but then it's like, how do we achieve them? We need money. And the European Union, within the big framework of the Next Generation EU, is providing some funds, either through the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which is the context in which each state develops its national recovery and resilience plan, and also there is the cohesion policy. And cohesion policy for the previous programming period allocated up to 8% of resources to urban issues. So cohesion policy aims at achieving a sort of uniform development and innovation of all the territories in Europe, and funding, according to the principle of cohesion policy, is distributed in proportion to the damage that an area suffered and the fragility of an area or of a sector. So for this next programming period, as for the previous one, we know that there is the REACT-EU fund, which is as well part of this cohesion policy, and this funding is gonna be targeted to the touristic sector. And I mean, then we can talk about that maybe a bit later, but yeah, this is a bit it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora. Thank you also for highlighting different topics and dimensions that we didn't explore, but are clearly visible in the work we did. You would read also our final publication that is ready in these days, and I really thank all the partners for contributing to this. You will find more elements online, also on different elements that you recalled, like the role of skills, the use of data, digitalization. So there are so many elements that are part of the integrated action plans of our cities. What I notice is that, yes, there are so many great experiences in tourism-friendly cities, but also so many others from Florence, from Ghent, that we are going to hear right now. And so what we see is that innovation in tourism is scattered. We have so many great things happening. So the need for more coordinated policies is very strong right now, and I'm really sure that also starting from the contacts that we are establishing today, that we established along the project, we are going in the next few years to influence the debate, to shake the debate in Europe on what it means to be a sustainable tourism destination, tourism-friendly cities. I asked to Bram from Braeckevelt, Deputy Mayor for Tourism of Ghent, how all these topics are connected also to other innovative projects and actions that you are doing in Ghent, which is one of the most popular tourism destinations in Belgium. And I'm pretty sure that with all the Urban Innovative Actions project, with all the URBACT initiatives, Ghent was involved as partner in the previous URBACT project, Interactive Cities on the role of social media for sustainable urban development. You are part of the urban city branding group of Eurocities. So there are so many different aspects that are strictly connected to the work we're doing and we are discussing today.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. It's a great honor to be here in Venice. So thank you for that. But it's also a great honor to be here today with you all guys who are working so hard the last couple of years on this program. And so for me, it's a big honor to be here and explain a bit the situation in Ghent, but also to learn from you all. So you're already, after one day, all in my heart. So thanks a lot for the invitation. So my name is Bram van Braeckevelt. You pronounced it very well. I have to congratulate you on that. It's amazing. So I'm Deputy Mayor for the City of Ghent. For those who do not know Ghent, it's a half an hour away from Brussels by train, so it's in Belgium. We have 260,000 inhabitants, and you know, we were the biggest city apart from Paris on the north of the Alps a long time ago in the 13th century, and we are known by a very famous painting, The Mystic Lamp from Van Eyck, and we have also a castle in the middle of the water, of course, very nice to see. Maybe some figures. So like I said, we have 260,000 inhabitants, and on general we have like 1 million people staying a year. So it's 4 out of 1. So it's not that crowded as in other cities here who are here today. We know, but that's also one of the reasons why Lonely Planet mentioned Ghent as Europe's best kept secret. But we also knew that when I started in 2019, the impact of tourism would be very big, and we knew that the number of hotel rooms would double in my term, so in 6 years' time. So that was one of the reasons, together with the predictions of the UNWTO about the growth of tourism, that we said we have to start now creating a vision for the long term, so that we can stay a city with tourists, but not become a touristical city. That's very important to keep the balance with our local community on the one hand side, but also to stay a city who is welcoming visitors, because a city that doesn't welcome visitors has a problem as well, because it means it doesn't evolve, doesn't learn. So it was very important to have that balance. So what did we do? We had a city debate. We had 3 sessions with all of the important people who are engaged in tourism, but also with locals who are, and you have people who are very proud of the city, of course, but you also have people saying, you know, there are too many tourists, why is it necessary? On the one hand side, but on the other hand side, of course, you have people who are living from tourism, so that's also important to bring those people together, and it was very nice to see that we had very different types of discussions, but at the end of those 3 sessions, we had a very specific plan for the future with 8 pillars. And it's very nice to see that, and I hope some of the cities here represent will recognize a couple of the pillars, because I think that in general the cities are having the same challenges with tourism, but the one city maybe a bit more about that specific theme, and another city maybe less, but nonetheless, I think it's important to have a global vision. I will tell you more of that later on, but maybe the 8 pillars that are important for us starts with one big action, and that is that everything we do with tourism has to be based on also livability. That is what it starts with. So when we promote our city, we promote our city saying that it's, of course, it's more than just one night stay. You can bring your pajamas, so you can stay the time you want to stay, but stay more than one night. But we also try to, and that's the first pillar, we will never sell us as Disneyland. We will always try to be ourselves. Only in Ghent is very important. So we are talking about our food scene. We're a very vegetarian city. We are talking about our light in the city and stuff like that. So we don't want to sell us differently than we are, and we feel that people who are coming to Ghent, they sense the vibrant city, and they also sense that we are a real city who is alive, and I think that's very important. The second pillar is fair, level playing field. Laura mentioned very important things. We also have a big challenge in Ghent concerning housing. We are a student city. We have 80,000 people every year who come to Ghent to study. We are a harbor city, but we also having housing problems because of tourism. So we did 3 things. First of all, we stopped giving permission for housing to be transformed into short-term rental. That's one thing. We also are trying to do everything we can to fetch out the Airbnbs, especially the Airbnbs who are not paying the city tax, of course. But that is what we can do on the level, on the local level, of course. But we are also promoting the stay in Ghent, but we also are promoting that it can be on a fair way. And you mentioned Fairbnb. We just started with Fairbnb, so I hope that what you mentioned about it can be optimized. But we also feel that you have to have an alternative for Airbnb. That's for sure. The third very important thing to keep the balance is to spread out in the city. Now we have, of course, a beautiful center, but we also feel that it's important that people can come out of the center for 2 things, so that everyone can enjoy the city on the one hand side, but on the other hand side, the focus on the center can be a bit relieved in the future. So we asked, and especially during COVID, we asked famous Ghentians to make their own route, a walking route, in and out of the city center, so people can, lead by example. And that's something that has worked very well. But we are also working on a hotel plan to spread hotels in our city, but also to top off the possible growth of hotels on the long term. It's not a difficult debate. It's not an easy debate, but I think it's necessary if we want to have to keep the balance on the long term. The fourth pillar is mobility, and as mentioned, it's a very important thing for our city, impact in our city, but also how people are coming to our city. We are promoting train, we are promoting buses as well, but we are also trying to keep the buses away from the city center, because the impact in our middle-aged city is really big from time to time. But we are also trying to really focus on staying in Ghent and not just coming for one day and then leaving again, because if we ask the Ghentians what type of tourism is a bit bothering, then they will all say, the day groups who are coming and leaving again. So we are trying to make a change there, also with the cruises, but I will come to that later on. Accessibility is one of the important things for us as well. I mentioned the middle-aged castle that we have in the middle of the city. It was built in the 12th century. You can imagine that it's not so easy to go on a wheelchair because it was meant to be protecting. But now we have a big city debate on whether we should make it accessible so that everyone can enjoy our castle. Also people with a wheelchair, for example, but also people who are, my parents are deaf, and so we have in our city castle, so I'm sensitive for that, but it's not only for my parents, but we have also a translation for people who are deaf in our city castle, with the audio guide and also translation to sign language. Also, that's also accessibility, together with focusing on people who don't have the money to travel a lot. So we have like different type of initiatives to promote, to make it possible that people can travel in our city, but also people, Ghentians, can travel out of our city. So accessibility is a really, really big thing. And it's also one of the big examples how we try to promote the fact that tourism can only be good for the city if everyone can benefit from it. Even also the Ghentians, because an accessible castle is good for tourism, but it's also very important for every Ghentian. Laura also mentioned employment yesterday, and I think that's also very important. And Eleonora also mentioned skills and the fact that we should focus on that. So for us, and I'm also responsible for work, so it's a very important theme. we are focusing on that as well. And an important part of a good balance is that you're not too dependent on tourism. So the figures are not exact, but we think that 8% of the people working in Ghent is working in tourism, in the tourism sector. As COVID has shown, it's good to be resilient from time to time. It's not always easy, of course, but we are focusing on that as well because it's good to be resilient for that. And then the climate neutral story is of course very, very important. And we have invested a lot in that during COVID. So we supported entrepreneurs, hotels, to become more green during the COVID period. So it was one of the reasons why we really took that dark page in the history of all of us to look how to support on the one hand side, but also with sight on the future on the other hand side. So we have a lot of green key hotels now. We have even a green globe hotel now. And we also decided to limit the cruises coming to Ghent. So the big sea cruises cannot dock anymore, but we also limited the river cruises to 5 a day, so that we don't have the big overwhelming type of day people coming to our city in big groups. And the last pillar of 8, and I know 8 is a lot, but we worked hard to have a big plan, is to connect tourism with the Ghentians, to connect Ghentians with tourists as ambassadors. We think that tourism is only one aspect of the city, and actually the city has to shine out what we are, who we are, and therefore we need our Ghentians and inhabitants to show that as well. So we are training them for those who want. It's not mandatory, but those who want, we endorse them to show our city the way we want it to be seen, and that means not only super clean, but also with the things that some cities may prefer not to show. We try to show us as we are, so what you see is what you get. Those are 8 pillars on which we are working today and tomorrow, and I'm sure the day after tomorrow as well. But we are doing that to keep the balance and to try to not be dependent on tourism. And one of the things we were talking about with Genova was the carrying capacity. And I think that's something very important, and that's why we are working on and spreading plan for the hotels. But something even more important is carrying capacity in the heart of the Ghentians. How much is good for our city, how much tourism is good for the Ghentians, and that's also something very, very important. And I think that we need a global approach for that, because as you mentioned, it's true that the cities are the first to feel the impact of tourism, but we need a global approach as Europe, on a European level, to find out how we can manage the growth that we know is coming, and the economic motor that is thriving tourism towards growth. And I think that if you know what challenges are before us, climate change, but also other big impacts that tourism bring, it's all not negative, but there are also challenges that we face. I think that the steps that you with URBACT have set with the 9 cities is a very important base to go further. And we have to go further. And we have to send also a message to all of our governments, because we can't do it alone as cities. We have to endorse our governments and Europe to go further and make sure that our cities will stay the beautiful cities as they are today, but also become even better later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bram. And it's And it's really great to see that Ghent, as all our cities used the months of pandemic for making a step further, for making tourism sector greener, more sustainable. And yes, I can say that this is the not the final moment of the conference, but it's the starting point of new collaborations, of new actions that we are going to do together, and the framework offered by Eurocities, as well as by other international organizations, is fundamental for enhancing the impact of the work that these cities did until now. The cities are politically represented now at the panel by Jorge Villar-Gujarro, Deputy Mayor for Tourism of Cáceres. I need to say that in all the cities involved, the deputy mayors and the mayors were really much involved, but Jorge was one of the most involved since the beginning, so I really thank you for being here with us. And you connected the action that you did in the framework of tourism-friendly cities to other URBACT initiatives in a specific area of Cáceres. Can you tell us more about it, but mostly how the focus on sustainable impact of tourism is improving the way Cáceres is planning its future on medium and long term? What are the lessons that you are also developing, not only at local level, but also at national level? Spain is one of the countries in Europe more active on this topic. So how this action can also influence the national debate on sustainable tourism?
Thank you, Simone, and thank you for the opportunity of sharing these experiences that we are developing in Cáceres. It is very important for us. You must know, in order that you to know what is Cáceres, really, Cáceres is the biggest municipality in terms of size of the European Union. So we have 3 times the size of a country like Singapore, or the same size of the municipality of the metropole of Tokyo, with just a little less of 100,000 people living inside, and with 93% of this area that has different preservation policies. So it is a challenge for us, and it is a challenge because we are more than a city. We have the size of a province, and tourism is important for us because it's a way of development. It's the main industry in Cáceres, but still we have a lot of way for developing, and we have a lot of way of developing because we are seeing right now this golden age in the words of the industry of Cáceres with the development. When we started in 2019, we were seeing historical data in our city, but in 2020 we found this pandemic crisis. The WTO they asked us to all the cities to have 3 things in our heads, and I think we accomplished this challenge. First, it was to be with the industry. Second, to enjoy this moment of a breakdown in order to redefine what we were and what we are, and 3, to be different when we exit this pandemic. Right now, Cáceres was the city of the 15 cities that are World Heritage by the UNESCO in Spain. We were the city that we had the better figures. Why we were in this city that was able to come back from the pandemics? Perhaps because we redefined what we were. We were a city before pandemics, city of patrimony and city of perhaps gastronomy. Right now, we are a city that has changed for this. Second, with this kind of tourism, very familiar of elderly population. Right now, we are attracting younger people because the opening of one of the best modern art, contemporary art museums in Europe, which is the Elga de Alvear. Just to make this small break, I really enjoy the Biennale of Venice because I really enjoy the contemporary art, and because I'm seeing what is doing contemporary art also for our destination in Cáceres. To go back to the words of Eleonora, yes, the tourism of our future must to be greener, must to be more inclusive, it must to be more digital, it must to include the own people of the city. If there is something that is very important in Cáceres is that we have a historical district from the 15th century, but this is a living century. And that's important because we are not a museum city and we need to keep this speciality. The speciality of being a lively city where the people can live with the tourist and where perhaps the tourist must to think about the people that are living here before coming. We are not going to be a museum. We are going to continue being a living city, and that's important. The importance also, and that's why it was very important at this time of planning what we want to do. And I think URBACT TFC was important because it was the base and the basis for a broader strategy of our city on the growth of our tourism as the first industry in Cáceres. Is right now we were able, thanks to URBACT, to put in the same table to the industry of tourism, but also the neighbors, which are very important, as I said, for us, and also the civil society. It was a work for 3 years to define what we want to be in 2030. Because if we know where we want to go, perhaps we had the chance of doing focus things and to keep this strategy. Right now, we have more or less a common path that is signed, that it was approved also by the plenary of the city council, by all the political parties that signed this agreement, which was based on this agenda that was planned thanks to this tourist-friendly cities URBACT strategy. We work, of course, in circularity, as we were explaining with this pilot pilot project that was highlighting and that was making possible that living from the fields of this important part of our city, that was the banks of the Ribera del Marco, to be that possible. We are seeing, even if it has been just 3 editions of this biomarket, which was the first biomarket in the region, but for the first edition we had just one agriculture selling directly the fresh product there. Right now we have 7, so we are seeing this circularity even in a very small pilot project. Circularity from the commerce of the products. Also with another URBACT project, which is Resourceful Cities. We did a little bit the same with the banks of the Ribera del Marco, but from the wastes. From the wastings of the Ribera, we are making a circularity in order to have circularity from the product, circularity from the wastings. What else I want to highlight? I want to highlight, of course, that we are a city that we are not Venice, we are not perhaps Genoa. We are a city that has a lot of development and a lot of space for our development, but we need to drive from the institutions where we want to be in the near future. We have this opportunity. We have this opportunity to learn, and to learn from your experience. So that's why it is important for us to have this team, to have all your cities and to understand how you have been growing, and to understand what are the defies that we are going to afford in the near future. understanding this big debate in the words of Laura, short-term rentals. It is important. Of course, it is important, and in our city, we doubled the last year the number of touristic apartments. It's important to know, and I agree, of course, with you with this the importance of have a very strict law concerning touristic apartments. I think that our city is one of the only cities in Spain not having this kind of problems, and this is because our regional law is very strict from the beginning. Before having even touristic apartments, we have a law, and the most restrictive law in all the country. That makes that more or less right now. It has been working as a housing program and a housing refurbishing program more than a problem with neighbors. Touristic apartments are not going to, they come for staying, because of course it has its market, but it is important that neighbors were before, and we need to keep our neighborhoods living. So thank you, Simone, again. And thanks to all this URBACT team for giving us this much important insight that is going to be one of the bases of the development of Cáceres in the near future. I'm quite sad that this project is finishing, but I'm sure, and that we are going to continue to do big things, because it is much needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jorge. You highlighted also a very important element that often is unperceived, but is part of the richness, of the diversity, of the challenges that we recalled with our project. The fact that we decided since the beginning not to have only big cities, not to have only cities which are famous as Venice or Dubrovnik for the problems in managing tourism and for the challenges in promoting sustainable impact of tourism, but also small and medium-sized cities, which are, in my opinion, especially after the pandemic, the future of tourism in Europe. And I'm really happy that all these contributions will be part of the debate, especially in the future. So that's the reason why I asked the professor Nicola Bellini to give us some framework elements on the future of the European Urban Agenda on Sustainable Tourism Partnership, which is one of the new partnerships that were launched by the European Commission, that is going to work a lot also in a cross-cutting way with the other partnerships of the Urban Agenda for the EU, and to tell us also in your speech, will be the last one of the session, how the action of the cities that you saw today, cities of tourist-friendly cities, can be useful for the actions that the European Commission has in mind for this partnership.
Simone. Yes. And thank you, Laura, for this invitation to this very interesting event. I'm very grateful for the opportunity as a university professor for once not to teach, and to be here and learn and think with the real ones, the people that have their hands on reality and try to change it. I have to, of course, trade off for my enjoyment with some contribution, and as it was mentioned by Simone, my presence in here is very much linked to the new wave of priority themes which have been launched by the European Union with the Lujbljana agreements in 2021. And one of these new themes is sustainable tourism. It's an important opportunity, perhaps little known. I would not start a check how many of you knew it, I didn't know before starting to work on this subject, but this, it's what they call the Brussels fog. But it is an important opportunity. Starting with 2023, there will be a new thematic partnerships focusing on sustainable tourism. To do this, a new procedure has been launched this time, which includes, upon request by the European Council, the existence of the performing of an ex-ante assessment, an ex-ante check, an ex-ante thinking about should we really do it, how should we do it, in which relation this thematic partnership can be with the rest, the general scenario, general context of the policies of the European Union. And for some mysterious reasons, I'm in charge of this ex-ante assessment for the sustainable tourism priority. It is an experimental procedure. We do not have a handbook or guidelines how to do this assessment. It reminds me very much of an old Chinese saying, crossing the river by feeling the stones. And I can assure you that some of these stones are slippery. What we are at a critical moment of this process. We are drafting, I am drafting until next Monday. So I know what I will do during the weekend. The final report, final assessment, including a list of recommendations to the European Commission and to the member states, launching the new partnership with a call which is supposed to come out during the month of July, to spoil your holidays, not mine anymore. And that's everything I can tell you, because there's nothing is written down, nothing is official. I can only share with you in the remaining 10 minutes or less what I personally perceive as the challenges that will be in this process, for this new partnership. My personal, emphasized personal opinion, up to you to judge afterward how influential, better how uninfluential my opinions have been for the realization of the thing. I say, first challenge, and it was already mentioned by Simone just a few minutes ago, is reaching out to small and medium-sized cities much more than it was the case in the past for the urban agenda. Going beyond the usual suspects, and in sustainable tourism we have the usual list of the cities, including Venice, of course, which we always quote. I always quote in my classes, my lectures, because they are the most obvious, the most important examples. Which I think the challenge is not so much about marketing this initiative, but probably also changing perspective. There is a kind of, everywhere, including Brussels, a kind of common sense, which very easily becomes commonplace, that the whole thing is a matter of, I would say, knowledge transfer from the big cities to the small cities, that we need to learn from Amsterdam. We love Amsterdam, we love everything they have done about over-tourism, about sustainable tourism, but perhaps Amsterdam has to learn from someone else as well. So shifting from the idea that small and medium-sized cities, and I think Cáceres' example is a very interesting case, where you sort of import and adapt solutions created and designed in larger metropolitan settings to the smaller settings, but rather use small and medium-sized cities as laboratories, as places for experimentation, which then, I'm sure, can be transferred to the large metropolitan settings. How to involve then small and medium-sized cities? There will be plenty of recommendations from the expert, it is me. But I think it will be what will make the difference will be the engagement by you, by the networks, by the associations, by the bodies who have the contacts with the cities to, first of all, to tell them about this opportunity, to involve them, and to make them really think that they're really worthwhile, that what they're doing can be really, really important also for the big cities. Second challenge, should go faster, a challenge of capitalizing on what you have done, what, for instance, the thematic partnership on culture and cultural heritage have done so far. There is no sense about restarting something to reinvent what has already been said, written, and invented. Unless we prove it wrong, unless we prove that the work about short-term rental is just a bunch of rubbish, but we have to say it, we have to give evidence of that and restart again. But if this is not, and I believe it's not, a bunch of rubbish, it's something important, there are a lot of good ideas, we need to move on. How to move on? We need, first of all, to expand what we have done, expand to smaller and medium-sized cities, that's a good idea. Expand to a more holistic view of sustainable tourism and urban tourism, which is, of course, about culture, but it's not just about culture. Culture is just a part of the urban tourist experience. And move on to concrete experience. We want to see these things happening. And I think the possibility to have actions that are less about thinking and exploring and writing and more about doing is a very interesting challenge. By the way, the new regulations, the documents by the European Union, the multi-annual working program for the urban agenda, clearly identifies the possibility to use also some kind of more simple, short kind of networks rather than the big thematic partnership, which has proved to be sometimes a little bit cumbersome and clumsy in being realized. Third, we said cities have a voice through the urban agenda. Wonderful. Is anyone listening to that? Because you can talk, but if no one listens, that's a problem. In Brussels, there are not many, honestly, listening to what urban agenda has so far produced. So the problem of, how to say, tuning, synchronizing, or use the analogy you like, to make the urban agenda work and results part of the policy process, formally involved in the policy process of the European Union, it's something which hopefully should be considered. Challenge number 4, it was mentioned before, I think, by Laura, the 3 pillars, which are a little bit our Bible. They have better knowledge, better regulations, and better funding. And one of the points which have been made is that so far urban agenda has produced a lot of better knowledge, hopefully better, very little better regulations, very little ideas about better funding, and that we should rebalance this. And I think this is very important, how to do it. Better knowledge, of course, there's still a room for improving our learning, our exchanges, etc. But better regulations. I don't want to look really, the bad guy in the group, but tourism is likely to be in the next years not the heaven, not the beautiful area where everything grows, but the field of a social and political conflict within the cities. And this has to do with the short-term rental issue, but not just with the short-term rental issue, because short-term rental issue is a conflict by those who disagree with short-term rental, but don't forget all the people in our cities that live, whose income depends on short-term rental. So we are establishing a situation of potential conflict. And the other matter which we mentioned so little, although it was mentioned here, and that's very important, is employment, it's labor. It's becoming, we have seen it during the pandemic, it's becoming the next big social issue in our cities, the labor conditions, the labor situations within the tourism industry. So we need to think in terms of regulation. And we need to think in terms of funding, because of course there is plenty. You will see, go to the European Commission website. There is a beautiful funding guide website where you can say what you wish to do in your tourism, and you get the beautiful funding for you. You need to do it in English, though, because it's only in English. It's the official language of the Irish Republic and of the European Union. That's interesting, because there are issues where you don't find much funding. I think there is a big open issues about funding innovation in tourism. What makes the thing go? Innovation in tourism, especially when you think about innovation, and again, common sense, commonplace, not just about digitalization. You just start to think that digitalization not always is innovation, and innovation not always is digitalization. Last, very short, the challenge of timing. I am personally a little bit worried. The length of the processes, and hope there is no delays when the thing will start, when the call will start, when the thematic partnership will be ready, and how long will it take to get results? We are at a critical moment. We are at the time of the restart after the pandemic. Crossing the fingers, but we are at the time of the restart after the pandemic. We are facing, also here, also in the city where I live, Florence, in many other cities, we are facing a new normal, which is very old, which is really the coming back on many, most, I'm tempted to say all the problems that we forgot for a while during the pandemic. This is the moment where we can act. This is the moment when we can steer the development. As the mayor told me a few days ago, this is the moment where I should think about governing the growth, because tomorrow is too late. And I wouldn't like this urban agenda to be late. I think the time for action is now. And that was my thinking. Sorry.
Thank you. Laura.
Yes, I just want to add, let me add just a couple of words. I want to really sincerely thank all the cities in this network that took the time to respond to the study that I was presenting before. This study has been very important, maybe not for you at the very moment when we did it, but for the discussion that we had with the DG Growth that launched the initiative on the short-term rental, and for DG REGIO, because it was also a hook inside the Commission to say, look, cities want to talk about this. So the urban agenda frame, in a certain way, legitimize some branch of the Commission, especially DG Growth that is working on regulating competitions and so on, to say, look, cities see this part of a sustainable tourism very interesting. And so your answers, like the input from Caceres, for instance, on their practice, have been read. And maybe it doesn't change completely, but it helped to shape the initiative of the DG Growth on better regulation. And I have been, in the name of your names, consulted in the draft of the new regulation at European level. It doesn't mean so much, but did not happen before because of the urban agenda. So that happened. And DG REGIO is extremely interested as well to support this network and to let this continue in a certain way because of the new launching of the partnership. So that's why there is so much going on. And last but not least, There is a think tank called Europa Decentral, and I finished this, that has been looking at all the urban agenda partnership, all the actions that have been produced of all the partnership, all the topics, and highlighted our action as one of the most promising in terms of regulation. So in a certain way, your feeling the information has been extremely precious, and I want to thank you for that, for the collaboration also with Anna Maria and Simone in, that have been helping in collecting all this information. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura, and thanks to all the speakers for highlighting the diversity of the challenges related to sustainable impact of tourism. I'm pretty convinced that all the different frameworks that you mentioned will be precious in the next few years for continuing our work at institutional level, but also beyond the institutional level. We created a great community of people, of friends, of persons who are working together, and we really want to make our cities better places to live in and to be visited. So I really hope that we will continue our work with you all, and that new tangible tools will be offered to our cities and to our local communities to be tourism friendly in the next few years. Thank you so much. So it's 1 o'clock, so it's time for lunch. Just a quick announcement from our leader, the leader of the leaders, almost.
Thank you. I don't want to keep you here, so if you want to stretch your legs, you're open to do that, because we'll take 5 more minutes for some announcements. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so lunch is very close, but we took a bit into account all the changes that happened in the last 2 days. So we are trying a bit to adapt the schedule. So we propose the following 2 things. We're going, before you go to lunch, we'll have like we'll take 3 minutes to hear a bit from Barbara about some technical things that we need to take into account for the final stretch of the project. Afterwards, the lunch, which can be, we propose it for 1 hour, it will be a networking lunch. Meaning that you will, of course, have the mission to enjoy the food, but also please try to, after you finish, to strategically go in some groups and talk, as you've naturally actually already did, about 2 things. Future projects, collaborations, how the network work can continue. And if it's too soon for that, because these things do not have to be artificial, maybe just talk about how your ULG is going to continue. If it's going to be still the same structure as the ULG, if you're going to transform it into a tourism forum, as it was, for example, in Krakow to begin with, so things like that. So we're going to take this 1 hour to do both of these things, so lunch, and please have this conversation in small groups. You do not need to talk to everyone, but I think make the best of the time, because as you saw in our human bingo, we all hate Zoom, so it's much more effective, the face-to-face conversations. After that, at 2 p.m., we still stay in the garden. We're going to create a circle with some of the benches there and taking some chairs. And we're going to do a sort of final round where each of you is going to say one insight from this conversation. So you don't have to, of course, solve the problem of continuity of the network in this hour, but just an insight whether you identified potential collaboration with other cities. I know that you are already actually working on that, or just to share maybe how your ULG is going to continue. So one of these 2 things, so a round. And then after we do this round, we do another round, which is going to be the final part. So a bit of a reflection on our work together from a personal point of view, and the secret missions. So prepare for the secret missions, please. And that should mean that we should finish by 3. Yeah, so that's the good part if we do all of this. So then we have 3 hours until the aperitivo in Scala di Povalo. Thank you. And then we're going to go to dinner, and we need to figure out logistics, I think, but we'll communicate in time. Does that work? Okay. So we hear from Barbara, 2 more minutes of attention, and then networking lunch at 2 p.m. We're ready to share. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Sorry to bring you to the ground after this this session on project administrative issues. Sorry to bring you back to earth. Just to remind you the deadlines. So we are in the final conference, so it means the project is ending. The official final date deadline is the 7th of August, is the official end date. So it means that everything has to be done more or less by that date. You will have, we will have 3 months for the reporting. That means that we have to send everything, progress reports, financial reports to the Secretariat by the 7th of November. And we kindly ask you to send us everything, the FLC certificates by mid-October. That could be a good date for you and for us to gather and then to send with sometimes, you know, I don't like, I'm quite an anxious person, so I don't like to be on the 6th of November, like, oh my God, I'm not have everything covered, so it would be great. I'm still available if you need anything. I hate Zoom, but I have to say that it has been a great support in this period. So if you want to have a conversation asking, I'm always available. Me for the financial part, Sabrina for the communication, and Gianluca, of course, for everything about leadership, maybe. Please remember also ULG's meetings are very, very important. It is the huge part of URBACT method, and it is important to realize it and to report in a correct way. So please remind that. And I hope that's all. And evidences, sure, evidences, photos, reports, and everything about your meetings, the ULG's meeting, and what you have done, because we all have done a lot of things, so it is important that the Secretariat and the other networks maybe also can know that, so it is important, the evidences and the reports on what we have done. That's it. Thank you.